Okay, so it's just after 7 a.m. in Sydney on Tuesday, February the 18th. This is a general meeting of the Open Source Malaria Consortium, which is focusing on web platforms. So issues that we may have had in the past with how we're doing the project online rather than the usual subject of meetings like this, which is science. The agenda is posted in the right there, so there's a page which talks about the various things. And just as a reminder, if anyone wants to talk, then please, the three presenters, Alice, Chuck, and Steph at the moment, can switch on their microphone and speak, no problem. Others who would like to say something, please raise your hand and I'll make your presenters. There's the chat window there is pretty good for having a discussion. Okay, so the background to this meeting, I guess, was that we started the OSM consortium a while back, and we're using a fairly basic set of tools, which have gradually sort of evolved. And we realized, for example, that we needed more functionality than the first things we were using, which was the electronic lab notebook. So we started using other things like Facebook and Google Plus and other things. We then realized that we needed a landing page where people could find the project, find out the different bits of the project, and that led to the current opensourcemalaria.org page, which was designed and developed by Cloud City Development, who were in this meeting, and then we have also used other sort of less obvious things for a scientific project, such as GitHub as a way of maintaining a public to-do list. So having a list of things which need to be done for the project assigned to people with perhaps deadlines and groupings. So all of those things, along with the more expected things like the wiki. Now, it's been a sort of gradual evolution of things. And you could say that perhaps we're running a risk of having too many sites. That's one of the issues. We've taken the philosophy that we need to be involved in places where people currently are, so in busy places, so that we can find people who might want to contribute to the. But there is a question about, for example, whether Facebook is a valuable resource, given that we don't really have a lot of activity there, and we don't really have a lot of people who are involved in following the project or contributing on that platform. So it could be that maybe there's too many. However, there are several issues there with the existing platforms that we should perhaps talk about. And if we could, what I'd like to do is start just by talking about the landing page, which was, of course, the thing which was the big new thing that happened last year with Cloud City, where we had this landing page. Now, we want to encourage participation in the project by as many people as possible, but we also want to encourage participation by people who maybe aren't that familiar with or aren't that web savvy, I guess. So people who maybe can contribute to the science of the project, but maybe aren't that familiar with lots of different tools. So as one example, recently, we've been using GitHub, which we'll come back to in a second. We've been using GitHub, and I think for people who aren't necessarily used to using that platform, I think a lot of people found it quite overwhelming, the number of emails they were getting. So every time someone comments on something, so does something even quite minor, a new email will come through if they are subscribed to the relevant part of GitHub, the sort of project area in GitHub. I think some people were finding it a bit spammy and not necessarily knowing how to filter the emails or group them in some way. And so I think some people just stopped participating in that platform, which is obviously a negative. We'll come back to that in a minute, but things like that where you think, well, people who perhaps are used to email and Word documents but aren't necessarily that familiar with newer ways of collaborating online could be put off. And so we want to encourage those people to participate, and one of the ways we can do that is with the landing page. Now, at the moment, we've had some feedback, not directly, but via people at MMV, I think, people who've spoken to people at MMV, who are our scientific funders and collaborators, have said that the the landing page could be done in a way that allows people to get up to speed with the science more easily. Now, if you go to this page, and I'll just make sure that the relevant link is here in the discussion notes in case people don't have it. And you go to the opening page there, then one of the really attractive features from our point of view was that page lists the recent activity. So project activity there is listed automatically from GitHub, and the nice thing about that is that you maintain one site, which is where the current things are happening, and that is automatically fed here, so that we don't need to obviously maintain a site separately. However, one of the things there is that on GitHub, of course, we do tag things with different tags to separate out the different kinds of activities. So we have things like molecules that are being made right now, or things that are non-science which need to be done, for example. And we have things also tagged by responsibility. So who is doing what? So we actually have quite a lot of rich functionality on that website. That's one of the attractive features of it. But we're not using that at the moment for feeding through to this project activity page. So one of the things that the scientists who were following the site said was, what, it'd be nice to see the project activity grouped in terms of what's new in chemistry, and what's being made right now, or what are the current issues that need assistance, for example, and have the project activity window in the middle there grouped in several different parts. So new in chemistry, who's doing what, the current most active posts or something. So using the functionality in GitHub to try and filter and sift these things into different kind of sub windows, which is a nice idea, because if you look at it at the moment, it has everything there. Obviously the previews are quite lengthy, but it has everything there. But it's not necessarily grouped in a way that makes it easy for a scientist to come to the site and say, okay, well, what are we doing now? So, for example, at the moment, what I'm seeing is the two top posts are, two of the most important kind of things, which are synthesis of certain molecules. But when you look at that, because it's got all the strings there, and because it's got a lot of technical language, of course, when you look at that, if you're not familiar with the project, you'll think, well, it looks like it's an error message, because it's just a bunch of jargon and strings and numbers. Maybe something's gone wrong with the website. Actually, it's fine. It's just a bunch of chemistry, and a link to a picture, so it looks like it's gone a bit skewed. But what we could have there instead, of course, is a window that says, molecules currently being made, and that's a separate window from a window below it, which says, who is currently doing what, or something of that kind. So I guess the first question is whether anyone has an opinion about that, or about the appearance, I think, of this landing page in terms of what might be needed for that. Just be aware, of course, that we do have at the moment the front page, which is where it is, and then there are two links at the top: join the team and meet the team, and then there are links at the side to the various parts of the project. And on the right-hand side, we have the links to Twitter and Facebook. And so, does anyone want to say anything about the strengths and weaknesses of the landing page? And maybe we don't have to change anything, but maybe if people could say something about what they might want to see as a change in that page. Patrick, do you want to? I'll make you a presenter in case you want to talk rather than type. It might be quicker. So Alice, Chuck, Patrick, and Steph, if you want to enable microphone and speak.
Hello, am I coming through?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, I just said I like the idea of having a place that I can link friends of mine who are maybe chemists and maybe interested in helping out. I explained the project to someone in person. They say that's really exciting. Where can I go from there? For example, Sabin, who's doing some chemistry for us now, is an old friend of mine, and I told him about the project and linked him through. But I really had to dig into my own lab books to show him examples of structures and things that we were doing just now. So a landing page that has something a chemist can just pictures of molecules immediately make people feel like, okay, I'm starting to understand what's going on here. And I don't have any kind of ideas about specific structure, but just that was always something I was looking for, just a page to link people to that would just be bam, even if it was slightly out of date, just something maybe a little bit polished, a couple of structures, a couple of schemes.
Yeah, yeah, for me as well, the ability to have structures on the front page here would be nice, in the sense of attracting med chemists. So at the moment, for example, the link I'm seeing is the one that's just come up, I guess, from Alice, which is the synthesis of N2-chloro, and then there's the Inchy string, and then there's a link which is for the picture of the molecule. Now, of course, if you go to the relevant post on GitHub, you'll see the structure of the molecule. But it would, of course, be nice if if that picture was somehow previewed here, and I don't know if that's easy to do. But that draws people in because I guess med chemists' imagination is driven by structures of molecules and pictures like that, right? The two things I was going to mention as well was, I mean, about that, I guess, was the ability for us to have like previews of the sort of tailor the previews of the posts on GitHub that come through here. So I guess it feels like it's great to have that. There's so much activity there, which is very important, I think, for the project, and to be able to link through to new things. But it would be interesting to see if we could tweak the previews of what's there. Firstly, in other words, seeing a little bit of the picture of a molecule, and then also grouping in terms of subject area. That to me would be really useful. I mean, the other things here are quite static, so we don't necessarily need the lab notebook to give previews because that's going to be extremely technical. And if you want the technical details, you can go to the lab notebook, I think. And so I think that's not necessarily important. But the wiki doesn't change much, and the Twitter activity is fairly self-explanatory. So I think that's fine. And we do tend to announce a lot of things on Twitter. But it seems to me the project activity is so crucial because it encompasses everything, and we're using it in an increasing amount. Alice, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I was just going to say that one thing I'd thought about was if there was a possibility to have a feature in the feed on the landing page whereby when you hovered over the text, if there was an image, that it would kind of come up in, a little bit like those chemicalized windows, so that you could see the corresponding image for what you're looking at, because it's quite text heavy at the moment. And I was also going to say that something that's occurred to me recently is that because we've changed the way that we're using our sites quite a bit, and we've been focusing quite heavily on either writing long blogs or issues on GitHub, I think we've been doing less of the kind of intermediate, almost like snapshots on Google Plus. And I think sometimes maybe the blogs are a little bit too lengthy, and then the GitHub things are a little bit too short, or there's too much going on, too many threads. So maybe we have to think about that a bit, because those are the kind of things that work very well on Facebook or Google Plus or links on Twitter, as little snapshots.
Yep, it's true. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess the GitHub. Someone's got a microphone on. The GitHub thing is very is powerful in the way that we can tag things, but it needs to be used for quite strictly for things that need to be done. So to-do items. So everything that's put there is what's currently happening, and we can't really use it too much for discussion unless people are asking a specific question. Otherwise, it does become a bit of a swamp of things. because we need to be able to, they need to be, the GitHub issues need to be resolvable, basically. We need to be able to close them out when they're done. Sorry, Steph, did you have luck in rejoining?
I did. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
I got dreadful feedback. You were on speaker.
Yeah, I finally got it. Sounded kind of weird. So one thing I was thinking is maybe there's a role of the curator who lives between the content and the published interface. And as we understand more about what tools they need, then we can build those tools. But right now it doesn't seem like we necessarily know if they need images, or if they need a way to rename links, or if they need a way to show list items. The big clickable link that's coming from the GitHub issue is it's a pretty basic wrap of like, this is the name of the issue, this is everything in the issue. So if we need to pull segments out, maybe we could set something up that allows that to happen. But I was wondering if you guys had the potential for putting a person in that role to see what they actually need to do.
So do you could you just mute your microphone? Sorry. Thank you. It's just there's this amazing feedback. I get do you mean that that is someone who is looking at the kind of issues that we're looking at? So I guess a non-science person who is sort of doing these having the kind of things we're talking about. That you're talking about someone who's looking at that all the time. So looking after the nature of the websites and what they need, or are you talking about someone who is a scientist who is trying to ensure that the scientific content of what we're doing is being conveyed in a useful way?
I don't know if it's a scientist or not, but it could be that cleaning up and making the landing page more readable could be a human intelligence job at first.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting you say that, because we just I think from now and for the next little while, I'm not quite sure for how long, we do actually have someone who is got some time to spend on sort of some project management issues. So someone at the Medicines for Malaria venture, I think, is going to spend some time on the project to see if they can help out in some way. And it could be a really useful way for that person to get involved, to come along and sort of be very specific about what they think is needed from the outside. So this person is a medicinal chemist, not a practicing medicinal chemist. So it's someone at actually involved in making molecules, but it could absolutely do that. So maybe that could be one of the main tasks, actually, is to say, okay, well, how can this page be made to be more usable? Yeah, I think that'd be really good, actually. So what we can do is try that, and then maybe they can be very specific about what's needed, and then we can we can say exactly what it is that's required. Okay, we hadn't thought to do that, but actually that is one of the main things that needs doing. Okay, cool. The just while we're on GitHub, so I mean, I'm enjoying the GitHub thing a lot, the GitHub experience a lot, because I think that it's very powerful where we can tag people and put deadlines and so on to-do items. One thing that we were kind of surprised at when we looked at it was that you can't do a daily digest of emails from GitHub. So you can't, as you can with just a basic email list search, you can't say, okay, well, all the activity today, can you put it in one email and send it to me? And that means that people do find it's a bit spammy, because we have been doing there have been a couple of really busy things that have been going on, particularly with regard to synthesis and synthesis design, where people have been writing quite small responses to other people and engaging in a conversation. But every single one of those generates an email. And we looked at the GitHub website and couldn't find a way of grouping things. So I guess my question is not necessarily can we solve that, because I'm sure if we approach people we could solve that. My question is more to I guess to you guys, to Steph and to Chuck. How do you deal with when you're doing a project like this where small changes to something generates an alert? How do you deal with that traffic of alerts? Is there something? Is it a simple thing that you do which does like filtering your emails into a manageable amount, or do you just suck it up because you have to deal with so many different emails, or is there a way of handling it?
I would have to investigate that with Chuck a little bit. One nice thing about being in San Francisco is I can speak directly to some developers at GitHub about what you're talking about, and maybe they could patch it in pretty quick too.
Well, that would be awesome. Yeah, I'm assuming that because something as simple as that isn't there, that there's a smart way of dealing with it. But if not, it would be great to know if that can be done, because that would be pretty useful. Because then I guess we would feel less bad about engaging in a fairly swift back and forth conversation about things on GitHub. One of the reasons I think why it's so successful and generates that kind of level of back and forth conversation is because it has this lovely thing which allows you to respond to things on the website by using email, right? So you can just type in your email as normal and give a response which then goes to everyone concerned. That to me is extremely important, because that does appeal to contributors who perhaps from a more traditional background, who might be happier commenting using a more trusted platform than necessarily having to go to a website and deal with all of that. So it would be great if we can somehow resolve this. We can, of course, try and instruct people how to use Gmail properly and filter things, but when you get to that level of detail, I think you've lost it. And I think some people have been using Outlook, and it just generates an email per issue, and it's just too much. So okay, look, if we can in some way get in touch with them, that would be amazing. I mean, of course, that would be the most amazing result. So it would be cool if anyone has a lead there, that would be really amazing. Just as a way of having a conversation. We can, of course, true to form, we can of course start an issue in GitHub about it, and that will be a way of engaging those people in that conversation in a fairly in a nice way that closes the loop. Okay, good. But otherwise, generally speaking, I found the GitHub thing to be extremely productive. And we were trying to use a wiki to maintain a to-do list, and it really wasn't working because, of course, no one really edits the wiki that frequently. So speaking of which, the wiki itself is the place where we're currently storing the project status of everything, and so specifically, for example, the currently most active series, which we're doing the most experimental work on, is Series 4, and I'll just do. Now, I don't see any way around having a wiki, because it's just such a useful place to put the status of the project and to fold in the most recent results of what we're doing. We do currently have a volunteer who's looking at maintaining a couple of these pages on the wiki, which is helping, I think, to sort of fold in some new details and make it more readable. One of the things I guess I'm always interested in about wikis is that more people don't chip away at it. I guess it's seen perhaps as being somehow an official document, which people don't feel happy to change. I think, I don't know what it is, and I think maybe there is a barrier, because with the wiki that we're using, OpenWetWare, you have to have a login. You actually have to have a password and login. You can't just sort of roll up and do that. And of course, it doesn't really have OpenWetWare, which is the thing we use, doesn't really have as wide a user base as something like Wikipedia. So I guess it's interesting that it goes out of date so quickly because people don't really want to do it, and that's including the team here in Sydney. That we don't tend to have a lot of people who are happy to change the wiki, even though it's obviously so useful. Now, I don't really see a way around this. That we basically have to have people who are dedicated to maintaining a wiki, because there's got to be a project status page. So I'm not really sure what to do about this. Other than, of course, we could have a sort of open source Malaria joint login, which allows people to use the same account, but then you lose, I guess, some ownership of changes that are made. And it's important to try and have that sense of responsibility for changes that are made. I don't necessarily think that using a different site would be beneficial. So a question it could be, why aren't we maintaining this somewhere else, like on Wikipedia itself? But from what I can tell, that's not done. Wikipedia doesn't take active, projects like this, like research projects, which are actually going on right now, and allows people to maintain pages on those. It's much more that Wikipedia talks about things which other people are talking about. So there's a third point of reference about why something is notable. And as far as we're concerned, the latest results from this project are not notable because they're not being discussed by other people. So as far as I can tell, we have to use something like this, and openware, I guess, is as good as anything. From my perspective, it's certainly been good for us. It's had no downtime, and it's been very easy to use. But I don't see any advantage in changing the platform to try and go somewhere that's busier, unless everyone has a wiki site that they use for things like this, where they already have passwords and accounts, which might help us to go somewhere which has a wider user platform. But I don't know what that is. Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought, Patrick. I thought that a Wikipedia you can't use it for original research, which is the problem. Yeah, the Synaptic Leap. Graham mentions the Synaptic Leap, which is a site which is encouraging people to try and do biomedical research. I guess one of the open source biomedical research, one of the limitations of that platform became apparent when we really got busy on the first project, the Prazaquantal project, where we were using the Synaptic Leap as a blogging platform to try and record original results, and realized that we needed a lab notebook. And so we started using the lab notebook, and that took away a lot of the science from the site, which was fine. And then that left the Synaptic Leap as a blog, which was also fine. But then we realized we needed more than a blog. Yeah, so we needed something which was something like a wiki, which allowed a sort of continual static page which described the project. And we needed something like GitHub, which allowed a sort of to-do list to be maintained in the public. The blog itself wasn't really enough. We also had a couple of problems with that blogging platform. People found it annoying to insert pictures and things like that. So in fact, we've started, more recently, we've even taken the blog off the Synaptic Leap part. So we actually, let me just show you. We have found recently that for the Malaria project, that blogging is actually more straightforward using the electronic lab notebook platform. So that last link there is where some of the more recent sort of bloggy items have been on the Malaria project. So we've stopped using it day to day because we've just found that other things are slightly more usable than that, and we have to listen to sort of feedback from users. But it is unfortunate, yeah, that we're not still there. I guess we to some extent we've outgrown the limitations of simply a blogging platform, and that most of the activity now is off a blog, and the blog is used sort of general discussion issues. But it's an interesting one, and something we've sort of done gradually rather than making a definite decision to stop using the Synaptic Leap quite so much. All right. So on the wiki, I think, fulfills a very important purpose, which is that that everything is up to date, and that as we get new data, it has to be folded in. And the majority of that responsibility falls on me or whomever else is involved in leading various scientific parts of OSM. And I guess there's just no way around this. We have to factor in that an appreciable amount of time has to go into maintaining this and to be readable. It is, I think, a really important distillation of the important results. It just has to be maintained. But I think that as it stands, it's okay, and there's no quick fixes to either make people update it or to allow more people to update it. I mean, I think we're doing all we can for that for the moment. In my view. It's great having Deborah, who is a volunteer here in Sydney, who's tweaking the page. It shows that actually people really can make a difference in tweaking this page and making it up to date, which is really good. And you don't, again, have to be sort of scientifically trained to tweak and manage the page like this, which is very good. Yeah, okay. I think we'll leave it as it is, and if people have brainwaves about how we can improve it, then we can come back to that. All right, so that's the GitHub and the landing page and the wiki page. Just a quick note on social media. So we do use Facebook for posting new updates or appeals for assistance. We don't have a big following there because we're not actually that busy there ourselves. We use Twitter a lot for linking out to major events that happen, so meetings like this or to new data that comes through. And actually we do get quite a number of quick scientific responses there, which is proven to be quite useful. You don't have a lot of debates and discussions there, but you do get a lot of new contacts there. And we have a decent number of followers on Twitter now. But for more in detail thing, we have been using Google+. Now, one of the annoying things about the Google+ issue is that we started a page for the project back when we started the whole OSM project. We started a page for that for it, which is a static way of broadcasting event news about what's going on. And the downside of that is that to post there as OSM, you have to, of course, have the login to the project to be able to post it, because it's a broadcasting that's owned by the project. So you can't have people come along and post things about open source malaria just as who they are. So we started a community there called Open Source Malaria Research, which hopefully will address that issue, which is just as a community of people who can share whatever they want to about open source malaria research. So it's a community, which is fine. But one of the issues we're having with the original thing is that open source malaria as a person is being questioned by Google, right? So Google obviously thinks that open source malaria is not a person. And Google are pretty strict about this now, it seems, that they want every account to have an identity of a person behind it. So what they say is that we should have a person like me or something who starts a page like open source malaria. But unfortunately, our page has been started by this apparently spurious OSDD malaria identity, which means that we're kind of frozen. I think at the moment our identity is kind of frozen, and there's this risk that we might not be able to post there anymore. We still appear to be able to post via OSDD malaria, so we haven't been shut off totally. But I think eventually, probably we're going to get chased down and we'll be shut off, which is a problem because all of our YouTube videos are posted via that account. And no matter what we do, we can't seem to convince Google that it's a person. So we've appealed that, but it doesn't seem to work. So we do run the risk in the near future that will be shut off because it's seen as being an organization rather than as a person. Now, that makes me nervous because if that happens, then we're going to lose a bunch of content. And I'm not sure what to do about that at the moment.
Hey, Matt?
Hi.
Are you talking about just Google Plus stuff?
Yeah. Well, actually, the whole account.
Okay, so you've got open source malaria on Google Plus.
We have the original account, which is still I think it's called Open Source Malaria. That's the name. And I think the original account is still linked to OSDD malaria. Maybe I'm getting this. I can't remember if we switched over the name completely, but I think we're still under the account osdd.malaria at gmail.com. I think that's still the email address, but we've changed the name to Open Source Malaria, and all of our accounts there are still linked through that. I think that's right.
Okay. If you give me a point person, I'll work to unfuddle that.
Oh, really?
Sure. I think I know a few duct tape ways to fix you up.
That would be amazing. We were okay. Well, thank you for that. We were the simplest thing to have done, would have been way back in the day to have started it as they suggested via a person, and then it's linked to someone. But we actually did that. We did this before their kind of name policy came in, and so we're a little bit stuck because it's coming after the fact. But it'd be great. Okay, I'll ping you separately about that. That'd be really fantastic. Okay. The other things are fine, but I guess if anyone has got, okay, that's great. If anyone has got any suggestions as to things that do and don't work on the social media platforms, please say. Plus Facebook and Twitter, they all seem to have their various advantages, but they do of course require upkeep. Any immediate comments, or we can move on? Yeah, I agree, Patrick. It can be a bit of a pain to do this. We did investigate minimizing the effort involved in spreading the word on different platforms by using if this then that, which I think we managed to set up an automatic system whereby I think if we posted a new YouTube video, a tweet went out. I think that was the extent to which we mastered that particular platform. But we could investigate that a little bit more, so that, you know, for example, I mean, what you want, of course, is you want one central news broadcast, and then for that to go to several different places. That's what I'm talking about, and that is possible. It's just we haven't really, I think, you know, maximized our use of that kind of functionality yet. I agree with you, Patrick. I agree. One thing I guess I should mention is whether we should go old school and disseminate news via an email list. So I get a lot of emails from things like, you know, open science platforms and EU Open Data and Open Knowledge Foundation Australia and these things. So these are, you know, groups of people who are interested in collaboration and open science and open access and other things. And rather than have a platform where things are disseminated and discussed, people still default to email. Now, you know, we do, for the science meetings, we alert people by email because a lot of people are not on these platforms that we use online. And of course, you know, using a list of kind of discussion thing is an easy way for people to discuss things. And a lot of these things can be made open, of course, after the fact, so they can be searchable after the fact. But it just feels all wrong to me. That's all. And I guess it makes me nervous going back to email when we already have these other things that are set up in order to allow people to sort of find us more easily. So it is the one kind of elephant in the room, is that, you know, many of the people we're trying to reach are happier with email, and these listservs do allow you to have a daily digest fairly straightforwardly. Yeah, I mean, that's the other option, Alice, is you're right, is having a newsletter of some kind, which we put out, rather than something active. And I guess, you know, the question is whether we would expect a lot of feedback by email. And even if we got a lot of feedback by email, what would we do with that? You know, one of the things is that you'd have to then take the stuff from email and then manually put it back into the project ourselves. So, you know, we get a suggestion on an email and then we'd have to go and put that somewhere. And so it's an extra amount of effort for us. So it also makes me shiver as well. You know, the idea that we would then funnel more activity through us. Whereas if we try and encourage people to be part of the online platforms, we would encourage them to do things themselves, which is the whole point, that it's federated rather than going through a couple of people. So yeah, I think it worries me to try and do that, and maybe we should broadcast via email a little bit better to try and catch people with significant news. You know, it's not a bad idea. With links and so on. Wait for Graham and Stephanie before moving. Okay, thanks, Graham. Yeah, that was the ASAP video, right? There is a on the agenda. There's one brief thing. I want to wrap up in a few minutes because people have got other things to do. But I wanted to mention one other thing about molecule visualization, which was thing number 5 in the agenda. Just because there are 2 things that were done. One was Mike Robins did a really nice molecule visualization tool, which was meant to allow medicinal chemists to see what molecules are being discussed and to search and digest the information. The progress on that is halted just for a moment because we are talking with Campbell about different ways of visualizing the molecules too. So we've got 2 discussions going on about how to allow people to view the scientific detail of what's going on. And I think both of those things need to run their course before we talk about that anymore. So I don't feel the need to talk about that anymore here. It was on the original agenda, so it was still left there. But things are afoot there, so we can skip that, I think, for the moment. It's a absolutely crucial thing for us, but things are already happening. The last thing, I guess, that's specific is that we're using this platform, Adobe Connect, to run meetings. It does seem to have advantages over things like Hangouts. It just needs to be a little bit more robust on that for what we're doing. We can use Hangouts if people want, but for the moment, it seems to be working pretty well. And it's nice to be able to just have a link that people put in a web browser, which allows them to come here and type. And it doesn't matter if you haven't got an account; you can just sort of turn up and do whatever you want. But it seems to be working pretty well at the moment. I don't know of any platform that's more robust than this. It is, of course, not open. I mean, the University of Sydney pays for this, so that's why we're able to use it. But it is pretty useful in the sense that I can run these meetings anywhere. Yeah, no, it's not free, I don't think. I mean, you can probably, I guess you can sign up for a trial, but the way we use it is not free. It's fairly nice in the sense it doesn't require, well, I think it's fairly nice. So I've never actually used it as a guest, but I think it's a fairly nice platform to use for the moment, which is good for us. But it's something which is not free. Okay, well, it's time for any other business. I guess the one thing we haven't talked about is the lab notebook itself, but we talk about it quite a lot with the people who actually use it. The one major issue with the lab notebook is that there's the alerts aren't switched on. So if you comment on something and then someone replies to you, you don't get an alert that that's happened, which is very annoying. But I was talking with the lab trove people, the people who make this lab notebook. I talked with them last month about this very issue, and I think things are going to happen on that front. So I think the idea is that you'd come to the lab notebook and you'd log in or whatever, or it would remember your login for more than a day, which is currently one of the other issues. You'd go to one of the lab notebook pages and you'd have a little alert thing down the side there, which would say, "Oh, someone's replied to you." So I think that's coming, but it's just not been enabled yet. I think it's actually technically doable already, but it's just not been enabled yet. But I'm going to keep pestering about that because I think it's very important that happens. That we get that will make it much more of a kind of conversation platform rather than just a lab notebook, which is what it is already. Thanks, Chuck. That would be really good. If that's possible, then if that's possible to separate different issues into different subject areas, then that would allow us to do that. And so we can talk about how much effort that would be. Okay. Yeah. Right. That's right. That would be good. All right. We can talk about these things offline. Again, this conversation here is just about trying to establish what will be desirable and what's doable, rather than expecting anyone to actually do the work. It's more about sort of scoping out what's possible. All right. Look, it's 10 to 8 here in Sydney. If there's anything else people would like to talk about that's off the agenda, so any other business that we haven't discussed yet, it would be great to know about that, to hear if there's anything else about the online platforms which is or isn't working that people think is successful or not. Great to know. Of course, these things can be discussed offline as well, but just while we're all sitting here. Oh, any other business? Sorry, that's my academic committee voice coming into play. Any other business? Apologies and all these things for formal meeting minutes. So Chuck's typing. I just want to give him a chance to finish that. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Will do. Good. Okay, if there's nothing else, that's really that's been useful discussion, and there were a few things to follow up offline, which is really good. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Really appreciate the time and inputs and everything. We'll be having a science meeting in about a month or about 5 weeks' time, and we will, thank you, Al, and we'll alert people to that too by the usual channels. So, so thank you very much for coming along. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you all around soon. Take care, everyone.